Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker Show. This is your midweek roundup of all things Maker and embedded and lovely. Now on this week's show we have a bevy of fantastic projects to get through, an update to the Arduino command line interface which is quite interesting, and of course all the best things from funding websites. We're also going back to the mystery box competition where there's a mystery prize and a mystery prize winner. You put those things together and it means someone is getting some free stuff. So with all that to get through, let's get on with the show. We're starting this week's show with a project from Petoy on the Electromaker website, which takes us through their OpenCat framework. Now, as it says here, OpenCat is the open source Arduino and Raspberry Pi based quadruped robotic pet framework developed by Petoy. Quadruped, I can say the word quadruped. And if you're wondering what that means, they are a maker of, as it says here, Boston Dynamics style futuristic programmable robot dogs and robot cats. There's two kits you can get here from their website. This is the cat called Nibble and the dog called Bittle. And there's a lot of custom hardware that's gone into this. So here's a couple of gifs, for example, of Bittle moving around on the desk without a head, I've noticed. And here is the little cat called Nibble. Now this is just a very quick introduction to the framework. As it says here, the OpenCat software, the software that they've developed for controlling these little pets, it works on both Nibble and Bittle, which is the two things that they sell. However, controlled by NI board based on ATmega328P. So this is Arduino based. And in fact, the NI board that is being referred to there is this board here, which is a custom board they have created for mounting onto the back of a robot chassis and controlling a quadrupedal robot with it. And I think that's what makes this so interesting, is that you could theoretically print your own robot body based on the ideas of how these ones work and use something like the NI board in order to get it working. In fact, you could probably use the software API they have with completely custom hardware, given that it's based on the ATmega328P. It's a chip that's in Arduinos. You probably have a spare Arduino sitting around with a 328P in it that you are not using. And that's what I found sort of compelling. The other thing being that, being someone who looks at things on funding websites all the time to talk about on the Electromaker Show, I was somewhat surprised that either we have covered this on the show and I've forgotten about it, or we haven't. And yeah, I don't know how I would miss something like this. So Nibble and Bittle, two very cute pets that you can have on your desk. If you'd like to know a little bit more about them, I will leave a link to this page in the description of the video. We are now moving on to not one, but two videos from the Low Level Learning channel. Now, they are putting up videos about Rust at the minute, which is something I find quite interesting. When Rust sort of first went mainstream, as it were, I did try and learn a little bit of it, and programmer friends of mine were all very much taken up by the fact that it is a very fast but memory-safe programming language. There's a lot of reasons to love Rust. And from the very get-go, Rust worked on embedded devices. Alongside the Rust book, there was the Rust embedded book, and that took you through how to get an STM32-based development board working with embedded Rust. Now, this video using Rust on the Raspberry Pi Pico is something I found super interesting, and you will too. This is just essentially going through how to get the crate for the Rust crate. That's Rust's version of modules. If you're a Python user, you're used to getting in modules. If you're a Rust user, you get in crates. Very same idea. Getting the crate in that works with the Raspberry Pi Pico and doing some things with it, like flashing LEDs and all that kind of stuff. And that is exactly what this tutorial does. Now, it's been a while since we talked about low-level learning, but it's a fantastic channel for learning, well, low-level stuff. Everything from ARM assembly on the Raspberry Pi to the very basics, the lowest level, how to work with the registers of microcontrollers. It is a low-level learning channel, hence the name. And this is no different. It explains every single part about how the hardware extraction layer, the hardware abstraction layer between Rust and the Pi Pico works. And the hardware extraction layer, the idea of a HAL, is something you'll probably be familiar with if you've worked with the STM32 line of development boards before, as they have a very robust HAL for working with the microcontrollers in a safe way. This is no different. But I did say not one, but two videos, because this video takes you through sort of very much getting started with the Pi Pico, how to write Rust code that will then compile and be able to turn into a UF2 file that you can move over to the Pi Pico. And I thought, oh, that's cool. Of course it runs on the Pi Pico, though. Everything runs on the Pi Pico. And then he comes out with a video that says Rust runs on everything, including the Arduino Uno, which sort of blew my mind slightly. Now, of course, it shouldn't have blown my mind at all, because what is happening here is Rust code is being compiled down to a binary that the Arduino understands. And of course, that's something that can happen. All you need to do is, again, create a hardware abstraction layer that turns Rust code into a binary that the Arduino understands. And this is an even deeper dive into how something like that might happen. Rather than just using example code and talking through it, this is starting with nothing, getting the relevant Rust crates that you need, and using the hardware abstraction layer through those along with AVRDude in order to actually turn that Rust code into something that you can put on an Arduino, and then flashing it using the command line Arduino bootloader. The command line Arduino bootloader, flashing it from the command line using the Arduino bootloader. I think you see what I mean. So both of these videos are fascinating, and if you have a Pi Pico or an Arduino Uno sitting around, I suggest giving them a go. It's actually a very nice little introduction to the Rust programming language as well, and as I previously mentioned, there's the Rust book. If you would like to learn some Rust, just type the Rust book into Google. The official Rust website has a very nice getting started guide that takes you through some of the concepts that Rust uses. Anyhow, I will link both of these videos in the description of the video, and if you're not already subscribed to the Low Level Learning channel, they're fantastic, really. There's a huge amount of tutorials on here for all kinds of stuff, and as I've mentioned, there's everything from Hello World in ARM assembly through to doing real-time operating systems, and yeah, just general C programming courses as well. It's a great channel. Up next, we have a project which is unreasonably exciting to me because it's synthesizers and retro computing. What more could you love? Yeah, this is a modular synthesizer that was built using an Arduino, and it is being controlled using an Apple II. And yeah, if that doesn't excite you, then I don't know what does. This is a project from Joshua Coleman, and this is a YouTube channel which is surprisingly very new. There's only 43 subscribers to the channel, but it seems like looking at the channel that there's going to be more. There was a pilot episode, and since then there's been 2 things that have come out. I haven't had the time to watch this yet. But this video is incredibly high quality. It explains everything that is going on, and I will leave you to watch the entire video, which you will want to do. It is fantastic. But in short, what's going on here is that this is a custom synthesizer built using an Arduino. It uses the Mozi library, which some of you may be familiar with. If you are not, I suggest looking it up. It takes any Arduino and makes it quite simple to come up with some kind of a synthesizer, modular-esque synthesizer using one. But the real magic here is that the Apple II had a peripheral that you could buy, which was a DAC for controlling model trains. So it's a digital to audio converter. It takes the digital signals from the Apple II, converts them to analog voltage. And of course, if you've ever played with synthesizers, you will know that analog voltage is how you control those synthesizers.
And we listen. 2 notes. Frequency sweep.
Now, this is as you can hear, this is a sweep across the entire frequency range. And the way that's working is with a simple Apple II program that is telling the little DAC card, is using poke statements, if anyone remembers poke statements. And it is saying to change the value over time. And as it mentioned on the video there, I don't know if it's too small for you to see, the reason that the pitch and the gain change at the same time is because it's all connected to one CV input. But yes, this is a super interesting project. I will link it in the Hackaday article in the description because that's where you can find the video. Do head over to Joshua's channel and give his channel a subscription. And yes, this is one other part that I just thought I would quickly show you. This is the Apple keyboard being used as a keyboard to play the synthesizer. Again, using poke statements, so if you say, okay, if it's this key, then play this note, if it's that key, play that note. It's so simple, but it's so complicated at the same time. You can tell I'm excited. I love this project. Head and give Joshua a subscription. He absolutely deserves it. And if this is the kind of thing that he's going to continue making on his channel, it's going to be another one of the ones that I get very happy and giddy when something new gets uploaded to it. Now we're going to return to the YouTube channel of Eran Fiet. Now, if you remember, this is a channel which has done a lot of work interfacing with the original Atari 2600 and using modern ways of playing with it. So quite recently there was a video using motion controls. And this is playing a tennis game on the Atari 2600 using a real ping pong bat, using OpenCV and Python to find out where the bat is on the screen and then use that in order to interface with the Atari. Now, this video is sort of a teaser, really. As you can see here, this is working inside an emulator. However, another video on the channel does show how he has interfaced a Raspberry Pi with an original Atari 2600 before. At some point in the future, this is going to be a full tutorial on his channel, and we will definitely be coming back to it then. I just wanted to mention it as this came across my desk, and every single thing that Eran puts out about the Atari is super interesting. In terms of interfacing with old tech, this is a very focused project, and it seems like there's lots of ways he's thinking about specifically just the Atari 2600, and I really like that. People spending a lot of their mind and thinking as widely as they can about one little thing. That's when really interesting stuff happens. Before we move on, a little quick housekeeping. If you aren't already subscribed to the Electromaker YouTube channel, it would mean a lot to me if you would subscribe. Under the very video that you are watching right now, you will see that there is an option to subscribe to the channel, and if you click subscribe, then we will show up in your subscriptions tab on YouTube. Another thing you can do is click the bell here and select all, and this will give you notifications just within YouTube when a new video goes live. So up here in the corner, you will see under the notifications bell, here I use this every week in order to create this call to action thingy, so you can see we already have that there. This is what you will see in your YouTube if you sign up for notifications. Finally, I know that all YouTubers under the sun ask for likes, but it really does make a difference. If you do click like on the video, it makes it far more likely that YouTube will recommend it to other like-minded people. However, the best way by far you can support the Electromaker Show is by shopping in the Electromaker store. Under electromaker.io, we have a shop tab full of lots of interesting things from various different developers, like this IQ Audio DAC Pro. This is a new breed of audiophile DAC for the Raspberry Pi. Only $33, and it gives you some high quality outputs for your Pi. But we stock a lot more than just that. We stock actual Raspberry Pis, for example. We stock things from everybody you can see scrolling across the top of the screen right now. So if you are interested in helping us financially, this is by far the best way you can do it. We do not have adverts on our videos. We don't have a Patreon. We're hoping that we can just sustain this show by selling things from our shop. And at the end of the day, that works out better for everybody because you're getting cool stuff for your maker projects and we're getting the money we need to keep this show going. There'll never be any obligation to pay for the Electromaker Show. It is a YouTube show after all. It is there for everyone to enjoy, but this is by far the best way you can support us. If you would just like to come and hang out with us, however, if you head under the community tab, we have a Discord server. You can click here and you will be given a link to join our Discord server. More and more people keep joining, and it's going to be such a lovely space to share ideas and projects if you would like to join. There's also a spot there for people who are doing the Make It Smart contest, which is another thing we've talked about on the channel. Anyway, thank you so much for your patience. Any way that you can help the show is appreciated, but of course it will never be necessary. Let's get on with the rest of the show. Oh yes, it's been far too long. Yes, it is time once again to dive into the mystery box. It's been a while since we've done this on the show, so in case you are new and you don't know what this is a mystery box of evaluation boards and different components and various things that have been provided by the wonderful people at Mouser. And the contest is as simple as it could be. I reach my hand into this box and I pull something out, and then I look at last week's video and I pick a comment at random to win the mystery box prize. And so let's go right ahead and do it, shall we? Okay, I'm going to have to put this down because it's actually too heavy for me to lift the entire time. Okay, what do we have here? Development tools engineered by Silicon Labs. They make some nice fancy things. What do we have here? A BGX13P evaluation kit. Aha, I have discovered it. So this is, in fact, the BGX13P Wireless Express Starter Kit, which has a little BGX13P module on it. And if you follow this down the rabbit hole that is embedded controllery things that you can fiddle with, this is a Bluetooth 5 module. So taking a look here, this seems like it's going to be something that's going to be quite a lot of fun to fiddle with. If you ever wanted to try and get into making Bluetooth devices, this is seemingly a very good way of doing so, as it has a Bluetooth device right here. It has a serial to USB adapter on it already, so you can program it just via USB like you would an Arduino or something. And of course, there's a bunch of nice GPIO pins here as well. Having a quick look down here, it looks like it straight out the box just kind of works. You can plug in your kit and then open a terminal and connect to the board using COM port and baud rate using something like Minicom, for example. Although it does also mention Simplicity Studio here. Oh yeah, there's Android and iOS apps, very nice. And Simplicity Studio, which if you're not familiar is Silicon Labs' own distribution, which I believe is probably, is based on Eclipse, like many of these things are, because Eclipse is an incredibly extensible free IDE, as I am sure you're familiar with. So yes, we now have a super cool Bluetooth prize to give away, but now we need to find a person to give it away to. You're speaking in a very strange way during this competition, Ian. And the winner of this week's Mystery Box competition is Simple DIY Electro Music Project, who is someone we actually featured on last week's show and have featured a couple of times on the show. I mean, of course we have. It's music with microcontrollers. You know it's my soft spot. But as mentioned, the Mystery Box prizes winners are picked at random. So congratulations, Kevin. We'll be in touch with you as to how we can get this little Bluetooth 5 module out to you. I didn't check to see whether any of the outputs are capable of things like PWM or even analog voltage out, but I'm sure you'll find a very interesting way of incorporating a Bluetooth 5 module into microcontroller music. The Mystery Box prize will continue to be a part of this show. I really do love the idea of giving something completely random away to people who won't necessarily be expecting a prize. They just left a comment on the video. And I genuinely don't know everything that is in the boxes. I've made a big point of just kind of opening it and grabbing something out. Yes, occasionally I see a couple of things and get spoiled, but a lot of the time it's a fun thing for me too. That isn't to say we don't have some fantastic general competitions coming up over the next little while in Electromaker. We will be giving away some of the very things we've talked about on the show, and so obviously we'll be doing those competitions too. But for now, that's a lot of competition waffling. Let's get back to the rest of the show. We're now moving on to Funding Website Things, the section of the show where we look at things that appear on funding websites, hence the name. Today we're having a look at Mico, which is a pre-launch project featuring the RP2040. As it says, it's an open source, high-quality PDM USB microphone based on the Raspberry Pi RP2040 chip. So before we go any further, let's hear it in action.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Now, this is obviously just a very basic example, but for some people I feel like that might be enough. This is just a simple USB mic that's fairly decent quality. But to me, there's a little bit more to it, and in fact, it's typified entirely with one sentence just here. Also, since TinyML supports RP2040, Mico can function as a standalone edge computing audio device. That's kind of fascinating to me because what you have here is an RP2040 chip and a PDM microphone. It's a little microphone and a microcontroller that you can plug into your computer and develop with. And as it says here, if you put TinyML on there and you trained a model to just recognize your voice, you could, for example, have a little USB key that you plug into your computer and you can unlock your computer using voice recognition. You could maybe even use it as a form of two-factor authentication. Now, I'm not saying either of those things would be particularly secure. This would be a hobby project, but it is a very interesting thing. Now, you can see that this is a pre-launch project. We will be coming back to it on the show, and you can always sign up for more information about it just here if you are interested. Usually I look at a couple of things on funding website things, but we're a little bit pressed for time on this week's show. However, I would like to say, if you are someone who is a fan of crowd-funded maker and embedded DIY things, and you see anything that you think might fit on the show, don't hesitate to get in touch, either in the comments on YouTube, or the best way is the suggestions part of our Discord channel. Because while I do every week spend a little bit of time looking at things, there's a huge amount of stuff out there. And if there is anything that particularly excites you, there's a high chance that it will excite other people that watches the Electromaker Show as well. So don't hesitate to let me know if you think I'm missing something. We're closing out this week's show with just a few extra things I noticed on the internet this week that I thought might be interesting, beginning with the Arduino command line interface. Now, if you aren't particularly familiar with the Arduino CLI, I don't blame you. I don't think a huge amount of people are. Given that the main way people tend to use Arduinos is using the Arduino IDE, or some people use Platform IO, there's the IDE Beta version 2. There's lots of ways you can use Arduino in that respect. But equally, you can use the command line tool, which is a little bit closer to the old school using AVR dude to flash AVR microcontrollers that way. The difference being that the Arduino command line tool is designed to work with all Arduino boards, regardless of the architecture inside them. That's more or less all I'm going to say about it. If you've ever wondered if there is a dedicated Arduino command line interface, well, there is. They've been working on it for quite some time now, and this is the latest version of it. So I'll leave a link to just this tweet in the description, because this obviously leads through to the GitHub, and you can see all of the things that have changed. And on the Arduino website, there's instructions as to how you can use this. If you have a particularly low-powered old laptop that you run Linux on or something like that, and you use a command line interface in general, you know, you use Vim to code and all this kind of stuff, it's quite an interesting thing to look into. It's certainly worth having a play with if you haven't already. Moving over to the Raspberry Pi. Now, there is a new bootloader for the Raspberry Pi available. It's in beta, but the Raspberry Pi Foundation wants you to test it. And this is a news article I wrote on the Electromaker website about it. In short, the bootloader for the Raspberry Pi 4 is changing. And that's going to be a change that's going to be on all new Pis, all new Raspberry Pi 4s, Compute Module 4s, and Pi 400s with the keyboard built in. It's going to be, this new bootloader will be on the Pis before they even leave the factory. But now the beta is happening, and there's a way that you can take part in the beta to test the bootloader. Now, why do you need a new bootloader? Well, it's because it's going to allow network installations, essentially meaning that if you get a Pi and you have a blank micro SD card and you have no computer in which to actually flash that SD card with an operating system, you can just plug the Pi into any Ethernet port and power it up. And when it realizes there's nothing on the SD card and nothing on the USB drives, then it will actually install onto the micro SD card over the network or a USB drive, depending on which way around you do it. Now, you can get the beta bootloader through the Raspberry Pi Imager. And in fact, why don't we quickly go there now? So in the Raspberry Pi Imager here, usually you click choose OS and you choose your operating system as normal. Down here, there's a menu called MISC Utility Images. Under that, you can select the beta test bootloader. Now, if you click this, it will give you the option of having an SD card boot, a USB boot, or network boot. You probably just want to select SD card boot because it's still going to go through both of the options first. It's just going to first look at the SD card, then look at USB, and then, if it can't do that, it'll network boot. And so if you already have a Raspberry Pi with an SD card in it, you can do this and it won't affect your day-to-day. Well, it's a beta. I don't want to say that for absolutely sure. But it shouldn't affect your day-to-day because it will check if there's an operating system on that SD card and boot it as normal, the way it always has done. The difference being, if there isn't anything on that SD card, then it will open up the network menu and you have an option there to install. I haven't actually gone through it hands-on yet, but there's a great video here that the Raspberry Pi Foundation have put out about it. So this Raspberry Pi beta is, as I say, a beta. The idea is this is going to be on every Raspberry Pi when it comes out of the factory. And the way that they've done it pleases me, to be honest, because if you still want to burn normal SD cards using the Raspberry Pi Imager or using Etcher or whatever you want to use, it'll continue to work the same way it always has. This is going to be very useful for people who get a Raspberry Pi as their primary computer and are not in a position to use someone else's computer to burn an image for it. They won't have to buy a pre-burnt SD card or anything like that now. It means that theoretically you could get a second-hand Raspberry Pi locally and you could just get a blank micro SD card, and as long as there is someone who will allow you access to Ethernet for a few minutes, you can get a fully fledged operating system on that Pi without any other external influence. It's a really nice way of doing things, and I'm really glad the Pi. So, network installation on the Raspberry Pi via a new bootloader. It's a really nice thing, and it's a really nice way they've done it. If you still want to burn your micro SD cards, it's not going to change the way you use your Pi at all. But it does mean that people that maybe don't have access to a computer to burn a micro SD card, can't or don't want to buy a micro SD card with a pre-made image on it, they can get a Raspberry Pi and any blank micro SD card, and now all they need is access to an Ethernet port. It does have to be Ethernet, unfortunately. That's one thing that is slightly a shame, I suppose, is that I know a lot of people can get Wi-Fi access in cafes and things, but there's no way you can access Wi-Fi through the bootloader. It's just not a thing. But anyway, it's still a fantastic thing, this. It's still a fantastic idea, and if you want to test the new bootloader? If you want to test a boatload of boot, let me know how you get on. Finally this week, an article that sent me down a rabbit hole. So Hackaday, I happened to notice this thing saying CadQuery comes of age, and I thought, CadQuery is a project I heard of a while ago. Isn't it that Python command line thing that can help you create models? And then I saw this, and I thought, that doesn't look like what I remembered, because this is a GUI. This looks a bit like OpenCat. And of course, that's in the first sentence of this article as well. Now, we know what some of you are going to say. Not another programmatic card tool. What's wrong with OpenCat? And you'd be absolutely right. OpenCat is fantastic. And as I said a while ago, there's a wonderful book about it I talked about on the show. But I had a quick go at CadQuery again just to see, and it is really, really nice. Really, really easy to use. And it has a fantastic editor now called the CQ editor, and everything about it seems easier than it was last time I heard about it. Last time I think you had to compile it from source yourself. Now you do it all through Conda. And you can make, really nice things with a GUI that runs on Mac, Linux, and Windows. So if you are someone who likes programmatically creating your things to 3D print, or just in general want to create 3D models, definitely have a look at CadQuery, especially if you are a fan of Python. I still love OpenCat. I'm going to use that for a very long time to come, but it is nice to have options. And I have to say that, yeah, my small time I've spent playing with CadQuery this week, making boring things. I'm just making some hooks to hang coats on, but even so, the time I spent with it was a lot of fun, and I thought it was definitely worth mentioning in the show for that reason. So I'll link the Hackaday article in the description. From there you can jump through to CadQuery, and there is a great tutorial in the docs from them as to how you can get it all installed and up and running. So that has been the Electromaker Show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you as always for all the support you show this show, be it on YouTube or by buying things from the Electromaker store. Don't forget that we now have the Electromaker of the Month contest, which means that any project uploaded to the Electromaker website has a chance of being one of 3 winners every single month of the year. This is a thing we've put together with Nordic Semiconductor, who have put in some really fancy prizes. If you aren't sure what I mean, simply head to the electromaker.io website and look on the blog. You'll see there's a blog post about Electromaker of the Month just there. Anyway, I hope you're having a fun, safe and creative week, and I will speak to you next time.